Rogers.
What, is that relative?
See, that's not too far of a stretch.
Not too far of a stretch.
If you watched it on KTH, they were back to back.
Well, they did have like a, they had a crossover thing on EastEnders.
Yeah.
Well, no, it was it was the 30th anniversary.
So seriously, welcome to the Doctor Who panel. There we go. I'm gonna let our panel give all of us a chance to introduce ourselves real quick, and I'm gonna ask you, how did you get started with Doctor Who? I mean, great. My name's Ryan Galiotto. I've been a Doctor Who fan since I was 8. Hi, Ryan.
You should be.
Hi, Ryan.
Yeah, I've been a Doctor Who fan since I was 8.
Is this D.A. and Anna?
You're right. Yeah, I remember my dad set me down to an episode of the last segment of Underworld, Tom Baker, and that's what got me started. I still stuck around after that one. So I've had the Doctor Who bug for far too long. I even was a member of the Many Companions of Doctor Who, which was a fan club in the 80s in Chicago that unfortunately did not last through the hiatus.
We did.
Yes, we're still here.
No, Legion of Rassilon.
Forgive me for not dressing up like a doctor or in suspenders, but my name is Davidson L. Haworth. Some of you I've met before in the past at previous conventions. I am a fantasy author. I've also done television and film. And in regards to Doctor Who, I've been a watcher since 1977. And my first episode was Terror of the Zygons that I actually watched with my cousins in Manchester, because most of my family's in England, so I spent a lot of my summers in Manchester, going to the sweet shop, eating jelly babies, and reading Captain Britain comic books. So, yeah. So basically, I'm an avid Doctor Who watcher, and also what I'm doing in the state of California is I'm negotiating with faculties of universities and local colleges to get them involved into producing a Doctor Who elective in Doctor Who studies for the television show, and that's something that I've been working on for a little while now, and hopefully it'll take hold, so when the younger kids go to college, they can take an elective on Doctor Who.
Zero reads in a better class.
Yeah. And yeah, that's it.
Right, my name is Christopher Erickson, and no, it's not Christopher Eccleston. So,
Yeah.
you know.
Close.
Close.
Yeah.
A lot of people gloss over on that.
Yeah, so I've been called Christopher Eccleston a few times.
But it doesn't help that you sometimes.
Yes, have the kind of the same last name. There was actually an Eccleston Street somewhere in London that I've seen, not too far from the Victoria Station, for the one in Underground. But I am the managing editor for Science Fiction San Francisco. It's a web fanzine at efanzines/SFSF, cover events in the Bay Area. I started with Doctor Who. I couldn't even tell you what my first episode was, but it was KTCA, it was the Minneapolis-St. Paul Twin Cities public television station, and it was definitely Tom Baker. I remember that. I think it was actually the very first one, so it was Robot.
Could be TDW for Chicago.
Yeah, so it was it was Saturday. My dad was a big sci-fi fan, and that was like Saturday nights at 10 o'clock that was what we watched, and basically that was my treat for staying up late when I was at 5 or whatever. And they packaged it as sort of like a movie. They basically edited it where they took out all the the breaks and stuff, and so you basically got a movie. And then it got so popular they actually bought. They started with like a more recent episode, so you get like a Tom Baker, and you get afterwards you were getting William Hartnell. And so it's like you'd have them back to back. So it's like I realized, oh, this is like a whole long show, and they're all like tied together. And so I think I was like seeing like John Pertwee in the Three Doctors with like, but like at the same time, then after you're getting the Peter Davison episode or something. So it's like, oh, okay, so they totally tied together.
So we're all here, I'm assuming, as fans of a show that has a very unusual history. I mean, very few shows last this long. And I really, not had, hats off to the clever writer who decided, our main star is getting a little ill, we need to do something to keep the show going. And I wonder if that person who thought of that idea of regenerating him as an alien could even conceive of how far that would go. So,
Well, they used to have a limit of 12.
yeah,
Well, as far as we
Come
know,
on in.
there's still a limit of 12
We will fight.
regenerations, so.
well, the master fed that to you, so.
Yeah, well, that was a whole new body, and then there was the line in the doctor surgeon, he's like, how many times can you live? He said 536 or whatever it was.
503.
Wasn't it?
Thank you,
Actually, the law, Gallifreyan law that only said you had 12 generations.
Yes, I believe so, but
Not biological.
well, but they're no longer there, so who knows?
Yeah.
Yeah, hey, the doctor a rebel? So, I'm gonna ask you guys, since you're up here with me, why do you think Doctor Who lasted so long?
I guess it's like any character where if it's you've got all your DC comics, Marvel comics have been around, I think they're getting 50 years, Superman's 75th year anniversary this year, Star Trek's gonna be 52 years from now. James Bond, it's just you've got a core concept of a character that can change with times, and it's somehow the core parts of the character that he helps the weak, he tries to improve people, he's not he's not a big muscly thing. I mean, I think that's what a lot of people can relate to, is that he's he uses his intelligence, he's resourceful, it's just he's a regular person almost. And he's kind of an outcast as from both wherever he goes and his own race, and so I think a lot of people can relate to that. It's just there's a core part of the character that is always there, that's always a part of the fabric of being a human.
It's good, 'cause I want to bring that up later.
Yeah, I think not only do the doctors regenerate, but in a sense the show regenerates, with the continuation of the series with Christopher in 2005. Now, growing up in the United States, going to school here, when I was in high school, San Jose had conventions every year, and it was beautiful. They were small conventions, but I'd go back to school and talk about this Doctor Who convention, and only me and one other kid in the whole entire school knew what the heck Doctor Who was. And I always said to myself, this show is so amazing. And back then, it wasn't about special effects. It's all about writing, really.
Yeah.
Because
Story.
the writing,
Story
yeah.
and character.
And how come this thing never catches on? And here I am, some odd years later, in my mid-40s, and it just explodes. And everyone's Doctor Who this, Doctor Who that. I'm like, where were you like 30 years ago? This has been going on for a long time, and finally we're just catching up. But as you mentioned, like James Bond, Doctor Who, I think worldly has solidified itself up there with James Bond. When you think of England, you think James Bond. Well, when you think of Doctor Who, you think of James Bond.
Sherlock Holmes.
Yeah, Sherlock Holmes. And with in Japan, what do you think of with Japan? You think of Godzilla, and he's right up there. So
Samurai Warriors.
yeah, and he will outlive all of us. And
Actually, one thing that I find it's kind of interesting is that James Bond and Doctor Who have done the opposite. When James Bond came out, that was the trend. James Bond, he set the culture, everyone followed it, and then as the years went on, James Bond then started following, we have Moonraker because Star Wars was big that year.
Yeah.
Whereas Doctor Who started out small, well, in this country, there are many kids that grew up behind couches because of Doctor Who in England, but now it's gotten its big explosion, its super popularity, unbefore back. And I should teach English. Before popularity than it is now. It was just kind of the inverse of James Bond. James Bond is still, especially with the relaunch, very critical and very much big, but he's no longer, he is not the trendsetter, he's now part of the trend.
sure.
whereas Doctor Who's becoming a trend.
Well, here's a perfect example, just to mention one thing is, I tried everything possible to figure out where Doctor Who was playing on November 23rd. Because there's only 11 cities in the United States. And I actually go through all these, online, making phone calls, and finally got a hold of some kid in San Francisco working at the theater over there, on the phone, and said, I see online that you are gonna be doing the Doctor Who, and he says, yeah, but they're already sold out. I said, what do you mean? Oh, the first 2 screens are sold out, we still got some on the 3rd screen. So I go, give me my tickets, and I got tickets for it. But the thing is, within 4 hours, 3 movie screens sold out for the 50th anniversary. You see, even 10 years ago.
Yeah.
There was no way you would see that. That people would be like, who?
Seeing Doctor Who on a big screen, I'm excited.
Yeah.
Does everyone have tickets for that episode?
I had to get mine for the 25th because
Yeah.
down in LA, the 2 screens that they were showing at sold out in 30 minutes.
Wow.
I live in Reno and they only had it available for the 25th.
Well,
I'm sure like,
if you have it, you can aware of it.
Yeah, I mean, you could, there's always seeing Doctor Who in a theater is, if I could tell my 17-year-old self that you're going to be to a movie theater to watch Doctor Who, but again, how many people were with us when Fox launched Doctor Who and had so much hope? So much hope for the Fox show.
we did.
Well, to be honest, I saw a panel at Gallery where they had like a reunion of all the people there, and there was like 4 different companies that were doing this. There was BBC, Fox, Universal, and BBC Worldwide or whatever. So, probably we were lucky that the movie even got made.
Yeah, I mean, I understand enough about the movie industry and TV industry, and it's not one person to blame, but it was like I was very hopeful for it, and it didn't quite put it together, but it was definitely
It's
good
fun to
stuff.
blame Fox, just because we can always talk about Serenity and stuff, even though we've had like, 9 years of X-Files and
Yeah.
how many... Yeah, I probably...
Okay, so we're getting into tangent stuff. So,
Wibbly wobbly tiny wobbly. Anyways, okay, go ahead.
so we have different. I mean, there are people that have just come into Doctor Who with Matt Smith and have like gobbled it up, and it is a delicious thing. And my feeling on Doctor Who fandom is like the more the merrier. There is plenty. It's bigger on the inside. There's plenty of room for everyone. As much as I could whip out hipster glasses about, I remember back when, but no. So we have this continuing series that has adapted a lot. Some of the 60s episodes are painfully misogynistic, but...
Well, I think it depends on the writer, so...
Yeah, I agree with you, it's more the merrier, but, when I'm online and I'm on Gallifrey base, I'm constantly doing something Doctor Who every day. Between my writing and jumping into a Doctor Who discussion, this is somewhere on the internet. And the 50th anniversary preview came out, and to be honest with you, this might sound strange, but anytime I'm watching a Doctor Who episode, anything where, for example, the episode The Next Doctor, and they showed the doctors before, the 10th, and I'm like, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, you're showing, John Pertwee. I get all excited. It's like a mental orgasm for me, And I'm watching this 50th anniversary preview, and people online, well, new fans, they're like, well, who are all these other guys? And I'm like, really? So my only ask is a Doctor Who fan, if you're coming into it, please get into the classic stuff. Because there are many times in an episode where new people watch an episode, they'll have no idea what they're watching, like the macro, gridlock, no idea, so this is what I do, and this can remedy that. I buy every single release of Doctor Who on DVD, okay? I watch Unearthly Child, okay, so one DVD, one storyline, every single Friday night until the very last episode of Matt Smith. It takes me about 5 years to watch one a week. So I do it all in chronological order. By the time it's over, boom, you start new, it's all fresh again. And I say, if people just coming to the show can do that, or even iTunes it, stream it, that's a way of learning the show and not binging on it, because, binging is a terrible thing to do.
Netflix has a lot of that.
I would suggest, kind of a pull from each different doctor, because, say like the important ones, like the child, Daleks, and the Cybermen, some of those where, get all your Daleks, get all your Master, get all your, like the characters that we're seeing brought back, get those in there and then do it that way, because that way it's like people can go, okay, and then, you can kind of cut out the bad ones, and then you can kind of build it.
Yeah, they're fun!
Yeah, well, it's,
Bad ones
there's
are
bad
important
Star
too.
Trek episodes, I mean,
Heresy.
overall, overall it's better than Batman and Robin, but,
Well, before
Or Lost in
2005,
Space.
someone asked me,
Exactly.
what episode, what storyline would you recommend for a first timer? And before 2005, I always say, well, this is me, but I say the 5 Doctors. Because it kind of introduces them all at that point, and you
Yeah.
kind of get an idea for it.
I always hear people say Blink, and
Which is the worst.
He's gonna knock 4 times. Well, everybody says, "Oh, Blink, yeah, start with that one," and it's like, no. Why? I mean, I realize that's like probably the best one out of like the whole Big Tenet or whatever, and I'm like, that's the worst one to start with because it frames it as a Twilight Zone episode, isn't it? Because it's this guy and he's kind of there and other things happen.
The
It's
Dr.
like,
Light episode.
yeah, it's not really, you're kind of missing the concept is like, hey, this guy shows up and weird stuff happens around him and he fixes it, rather than like, it's what happens to this other people when this like shitstorm happens. So, anybody under the age of 18? Anybody care about swear words?
Just a service dog.
Okay, shitstorm it is. Yeah.
I put it on my radar roll.
Alright, there you go.
So sad.
But it's I would actually start with, if you're gonna go with the new series, I would do the 2-parter of The Empty Child, The Doctor Dances, because
Oh, I definitely agree.
I mean you're getting an ancillary characters, so it's like, oh, Torchwood, okay, I know who that is, and then it's also you're getting this idea that they're traveling back in time. You've got aliens that are showing up, so it's like it sets it all up.
And it does
Nice.
have,
And you get the horror.
and it does have one of my favorite moments of 50 years of Doctor Who at the end when he says, "Just this once, everybody lives."
Yeah.
I think that is,
Yeah.
you know,
that was
that is a key. That is probably one of Eccleston's best moments as the Doctor, when he's basically getting to redemption right here. I've gone through all this horrible Time Lord stuff. Everybody lives this once. For once, I did it right.
I got a funny
You
story
need
about
it
that
before
one.
Torchwood too.
What?
You really need it before Torchwood because
Yeah.
of the Captain Jack.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you mean? So, we could, Rich, some of the things that the program says we need to talk about are our favorite companions, and we've got 50 years to choose from. So, I'll get.
But you have to be limited to one.